The freighter Rusty Comet drifted toward Velari Station 12 like an old mule reluctantly approaching a veterinarian. The ship's engines hummed with a tired rhythm, and somewhere deep in the hull, a loose panel vibrated in protest. Jordan Hale tapped the console with the same patience one might use when dealing with an elderly appliance. "Easy," he muttered. "We're almost there. No dramatic explosions today, all right? I promised the insurance company I'd behave." The ship's navigation AI responded with a dry electronic tone. "Statistically, Captain Hale, 92% of your previous arrivals included at least one dramatic incident." "That's slander," Jordan said, leaning back in his chair. "Most of those were moderately dramatic." Outside the cockpit window, Velari Station 12 rotated slowly in the darkness. The massive structure looked less like a station and more like a floating fortress. Layers of docking rings surrounded a central command tower that glowed with precise white lights. Military patrol ships hovered nearby like patient predators. Jordan sighed. Velari military stations were famous for three things: strict inspections, terrifying officers, and absolutely terrible coffee. As his freighter glided toward the assigned docking platform, automated guidance beams locked onto the Rusty Comet. The ship trembled slightly as it was guided into position. "Docking complete," the AI announced. Jordan stood, stretched his arms, and grabbed his cargo manifest tablet. The shipment was simple enough: industrial coolant rods, replacement navigation chips, and 3 crates of hydroponic algae protein that smelled suspiciously like old socks. He stepped onto the docking ramp and immediately felt the cool metallic air of the station. Soldiers in dark Velari armor stood along the platform, their postures straight enough to make statues feel lazy, and in the center of them stood the officer in charge. Jordan noticed her instantly: Commander Tyris. Even before he knew her name, the entire platform seemed to orbit around her presence. She stood tall and perfectly still, wearing polished command armor that reflected the station lights. Her silver hair was pulled tightly behind her head, revealing the long, elegant ears that marked her Velari heritage. Her face was calm, sharp, and controlled, the kind of expression that suggested she had never once laughed at a bad joke. Jordan immediately had the uncomfortable feeling that she probably issued arrest warrants for people who laughed at bad jokes. She approached with slow, precise steps. "Freighter captain," she said, her voice calm but carrying the authority of someone used to commanding fleets. "Identify yourself." Jordan gave a casual nod. "Jordan Hale, cargo hauler, professional transporter of important goods and occasional questionable snacks." One of the nearby soldiers blinked. Commander Tyris did not. "Your cargo manifest," she said. Jordan handed over the tablet. She began reviewing it with intense concentration. Her sharp eyes scanned every detail as if expecting the numbers themselves to confess a crime. Jordan leaned against a nearby crate, watching the inspection. The silence stretched long enough that he felt obligated to say something. "Busy station today?" he asked. No response. Jordan continued anyway. "I passed 3 patrol cruisers on the way in. Either there's a war going on or someone stole the commander's lunch." A nearby soldier coughed very quietly. Commander Tyris slowly looked up from the tablet. Her eyes were sharp, focused, and just slightly dangerous. "There is no war," she said. "Good," Jordan replied. "Those are terrible for shipping schedules." The inspection continued. Crate scanners floated across the platform, projecting blue holographic grids over the cargo containers. One of the scanning drones beeped suspiciously while analyzing the algae protein crates. Jordan raised a finger. "Before that machine accuses me of biological warfare, I should warn you those smell worse than they are." The drone beeped again. One of the soldiers muttered, "Confirmed." For a brief moment, Jordan thought he saw the corner of Tyris's mouth twitch. She finished reviewing the manifest and handed the tablet back. "Your cargo appears compliant," she said. Jordan accepted the tablet and glanced at her more closely for the first time. Up close, the intimidating commander looked unexpectedly striking. Her features were sharp but elegant, her eyes bright and intelligent. The long Velari ears gave her an almost mythical appearance. Before Jordan's brain had time to apply its usual safety filter, the words slipped out naturally. "You know," he said casually, You're probably the most beautiful woman in the galaxy." The entire docking platform went silent. One soldier froze halfway through scanning a crate. Another nearly dropped his rifle. Jordan blinked. His brain finally caught up with his mouth. "Oh," he added, "I probably should have kept that thought inside my head." Commander Tyris stood completely still. For a long moment her expression remained perfectly controlled. Then something unexpected happened. A faint flush slowly appeared across her cheeks. She turned her head slightly away, clearing her throat as if the station air had suddenly become difficult to breathe. One of the soldiers looked at another soldier with an expression that clearly said, "Did that just happen?" Tyris quickly returned to her strict posture. "Inspection complete," she said sharply. Jordan nodded, trying very hard not to make the situation worse. "Great," he said. He started walking back toward his ship. Halfway up the ramp, he turned slightly. "Just to clarify," he added, "that was meant as a compliment, not insubordination." Behind him, Commander Tyris remained very still. But if someone had been watching carefully, they might have noticed the faintest hint of a smile trying very hard not to exist. Commander Tyris stood in the quiet of her command office long after the freighter had departed the station. Outside the wide observation window, Velari Station 12 rotated with slow, precise elegance, while distant stars burned silently beyond the transparent alloy glass. The station functioned exactly as it should. Patrol ships moved along assigned paths. Cargo vessels arrived and departed with disciplined efficiency. Every system followed order, except apparently her thoughts. Tyris stood with her hands behind her back, staring into space with the intense focus of someone trying to solve a complex tactical problem. Because in her mind, the same moment kept repeating. "You're probably the most beautiful woman in the galaxy." She narrowed her eyes slightly. It had been said so casually, as if the human pilot had simply commented on the weather or asked where the nearest cafeteria was located. For 30 years, Tyris had commanded fleets, suppressed pirate raids, negotiated tense military standoffs, and maintained authority over thousands of soldiers who feared disappointing her more than enemy weapons. In all that time, no one had spoken to her like that. People addressed her rank. They respected her command. They feared her reputation. No one had ever simply looked at her and spoken without calculation. Tyris exhaled slowly. Across the room, her tactical assistant drone hovered quietly, its spherical body projecting faint blue interface lights. "Commander," the drone said politely, "you have been staring at the stars for 14 minutes and 32 seconds. "I am thinking," Tyris replied. The drone paused. "Would you like assistance?" "No." "Very well. I will remain silently helpful." Tyris ignored it and continued staring out the window. She had learned early in her career that authority was survival. The Velari military command structure was dominated by officers who measured leadership through intimidation and force. Tyris had earned her position through discipline and strategic brilliance, but also through carefully maintained distance. Emotion was weakness, warmth invited challenges, and compliments were irrelevant. Yet somehow that human freighter pilot had delivered one with such effortless sincerity that it bypassed every defensive instinct she had built. Tyris turned toward her desk and activated the station traffic logs. "Display civilian freight departures," she ordered. The holographic interface expanded across the room. One entry blinked calmly in the list. "Rusty Comet, Captain Jordan Hale. Destination, Outer Perseus Trade Route." Tyris studied the information. Freight hauler, independent contractor, no criminal record. Minor history of mechanical violations and several citations for excessive informal communication during docking procedures. She tilted her head slightly. "That sounds accurate," she muttered. The drone floated closer. "Commander, are we conducting a security analysis of Captain Hale?" Tyris hesitated for half a second. "Yes. What threat level are we evaluating?" She looked at the hologram again. "Unknown." The drone considered that. "Noted." Meanwhile, several decks below, two Velari soldiers stood on cargo duty beside the docking platform. One leaned slightly toward the other. "Did you see the commander's face when the human said that?" "I did not see anything," the second soldier replied immediately. "Yes, you did." "No, I did not." "You absolutely did. I value my career. The first soldier lowered his voice. I think she turned red. That is biologically impossible. I swear it happened. The second soldier glanced carefully down the corridor. If you repeat that statement, I will deny knowing you. Back in her office, Tyris closed the traffic log. The freighter was already far beyond the station's control zone. That should have been the end of the matter. Instead, she found herself walking slowly back toward the observation window. Stars shimmered across the darkness like distant signals. After a moment, she spoke quietly. Drone? Yes, Commander? When is the next scheduled cargo route inspection rotation? The drone accessed the schedule. Routine freight inspections will occur again in 17 days. Tyris nodded once. Good. The drone waited. Tyris continued staring into space. 17 days. It was completely irrelevant whether that particular freighter returned. There were thousands of cargo ships moving through Velari territory every month. Statistically speaking, the chance of seeing the rusty comet again was minimal. The drone tilted slightly. Commander? Yes? You appear pleased. Tyris turned sharply. I do not. Understood, the drone replied immediately. The station lights dimmed slightly as night cycle began across several habitation sectors. Tyris folded her arms and continued observing the starfield. 17 days, she thought, and somewhere far across the trade lanes, a slightly battered freighter captain was probably telling his ship's computer that he had just accidentally complimented one of the most intimidating commanders in Velari space and survived the experience. Tyris shook her head faintly. For reasons she did not fully understand, the thought made the silence of space feel a little less cold. The rusty comet drifted back into Velari space 17 days later, with all the grace of a tired cargo animal returning to a familiar stable. The ship's engines groaned softly as Jordan guided it toward the rotating bulk of Velari Station 12. From a distance, the station looked just as intimidating as he remembered. A massive ringed fortress wrapped in white lights and guarded by patrol cruisers that seemed permanently suspicious of everything. Jordan leaned back in his chair and squinted at the station. All right, he said to the cockpit. Moment of truth. The navigation AI hummed softly. Clarification requested, it replied. Jordan rubbed his chin. There's about a 50% chance that when I land, the commander from last time will have me arrested for inappropriate compliments. Historical probability suggests 73%. Hey, I am merely analyzing your previous decisions. Jordan sighed and pushed the thrusters forward slightly. Let's just dock before my reputation arrives ahead of me. Guidance beams locked onto the rusty comet and gently pulled the freighter toward the assigned platform. As the ship settled into position, Jordan glanced through the cockpit window. A line of Velari soldiers stood along the platform, and at the center of them, Jordan blinked. Well, he muttered, that answers that question. Commander Tyris stood exactly where she had been the last time he visited. Same polished armor, same straight posture, same expression that suggested she could stop a meteor with eye contact alone. Jordan grabbed his cargo tablet and headed down the ramp. The moment his boots touched the platform, Tyris stepped forward. Freighter captain, she said. Commander, Jordan replied casually. Good to see you again. Several soldiers nearby subtly looked at one another. The commander nodded once. State your identification. Jordan Hale, still hauling cargo, still trying not to embarrass myself in front of important military officers. Tyris accepted the manifest tablet without reacting. She began reviewing the cargo list while the scanning drones floated toward the containers behind Jordan. The silence stretched again. Jordan shifted his weight. You know, he said, I'm starting to think you schedule your inspections personally just to keep an eye on my paperwork. Tyris looked up slowly. For a cargo pilot, Captain Hale, you speak frequently. I have a lot of thoughts. Most of them unnecessary. Jordan nodded thoughtfully. That's fair. Behind them, one of the cargo scanners beeped loudly while analyzing a crate. The holographic display flashed. Unknown organic composition. The nearest soldier immediately stepped closer. Jordan raised a hand quickly. Oh, don't panic, he said. That's just protein algae. The scanner beeped again. Jordan lowered his voice. Admittedly, aggressive protein algae. Tyris glanced at the crate. What is its purpose? Technically, nutritional supplements. And realistically, Jordan shrugged. Emergency ship food when you've made several bad life decisions. A few soldiers exchanged glances. One of them tried very hard not to smile. Tyris continued scanning the manifest. Her expression remained calm, but something about her posture was slightly different than before. Less rigid, less distant. Jordan noticed. Busy week? He asked. Yes. Pirates? No. Tax auditors? That would be worse. Jordan grinned. Good to know space has the same universal villains everywhere. The inspection drones floated across another crate, projecting bright blue light across the platform. For a moment, the glowing grid illuminated Tyris's face. Jordan suddenly realized he was staring again. He quickly looked away. Well, he said, scratching the back of his neck, before my mouth gets me into trouble again, I should probably clarify something. Tyris slowly looked up. Clarify. Last time I was here, I may have said something slightly inappropriate. One soldier nearly dropped a scanner. Tyris remained perfectly still. Yes, she said calmly. You did. Jordan nodded. I just wanted to confirm that it was meant respectfully. She studied him for a long moment. The soldiers around them stood very still. Finally, Tyris spoke. I did not interpret it as disrespect. Jordan blinked. Oh. Silence returned briefly. Then Jordan added carefully, so, I'm not banned from the station? No. Not fined? No. Not secretly on a Velari military watch list? Tyris paused. That remains classified. Jordan laughed quietly. Fair enough. Another scanning drone floated between them, briefly projecting a bright holographic grid over Jordan's jacket. The display flashed, human, mostly harmless. Jordan pointed at the drone. That machine has excellent judgment. For the first time, Tyris's expression softened. Very slightly, almost invisibly. But Jordan noticed, and for reasons he didn't quite understand, the most intimidating commander he had ever met suddenly seemed a little less like a fortress, and a little more like a person standing on a quiet docking platform in the middle of the stars. The rusty comet drifted back into Velari space 17 days later, with all the grace of a tired cargo animal returning to a familiar stable. The ship's engines groaned softly as Jordan guided it toward the rotating bulk of Velari Station 12. From a distance, the station looked just as intimidating as he remembered. A massive ringed fortress wrapped in white lights and guarded by patrol cruisers that seemed permanently suspicious of everything. Jordan leaned back in his chair and squinted at the station. All right, he said to the cockpit. Moment of truth. The navigation AI hummed softly. Clarification requested, it replied. Jordan rubbed his chin. There's about a 50% chance that when I land, the commander from last time will have me arrested for inappropriate compliments. Historical probability suggests 73%. Hey, I am merely analyzing your previous decisions. Jordan sighed and pushed the thrusters forward slightly. Let's just dock before my reputation arrives ahead of me. Guidance beams locked onto the rusty comet and gently pulled the freighter toward the assigned platform. As the ship settled into position, Jordan glanced through the cockpit window. A line of Velari soldiers stood along the platform, and at the center of them, Jordan blinked. Well, he muttered, that answers that question. Commander Tyris stood exactly where she had been the last time he visited. Same polished armor, same straight posture, same expression that suggested she could stop a meteor with eye contact alone. Jordan grabbed his cargo tablet and headed down the ramp. The moment his boots touched the platform, Tyris stepped forward. Freighter captain, she said. Commander, Jordan replied casually. Good to see you again. Several soldiers nearby subtly looked at one another. The commander nodded once. State your identification. Jordan Hale, still hauling cargo, still trying not to embarrass myself in front of important military officers. Tyris accepted the manifest tablet without reacting. She began reviewing the cargo list while the scanning drones floated toward the containers behind Jordan. The silence stretched again. Jordan shifted his weight. You know, he said, I'm starting to think you schedule your inspections personally just to keep an eye on my paperwork. Tyris looked up slowly. For a cargo pilot, Captain Hale, you speak frequently. I have a lot of thoughts. Most of them unnecessary. Jordan nodded thoughtfully. That's fair. Behind them, one of the cargo scanners beeped loudly while analyzing a crate. The holographic display flashed. Unknown organic composition. The nearest soldier immediately stepped closer. Jordan raised a hand quickly. Oh, don't panic, he said. That's just protein algae. The scanner beeped again. Jordan lowered his voice. Admittedly, aggressive protein algae. Tyris glanced at the crate. What is its purpose? Technically, nutritional supplements. And realistically, Jordan shrugged. Emergency ship food when you've made several bad life decisions. A few soldiers exchanged glances. One of them tried very hard not to smile. Tyris continued scanning the manifest. Her expression remained calm, but something about her posture was slightly different than before. Less rigid, less distant. Jordan noticed. Busy week? He asked. Yes. Pirates? No. Tax auditors? That would be worse. Jordan grinned. Good to know space has the same universal villains everywhere. The inspection drones floated across another crate, projecting bright blue light across the platform. For a moment, the glowing grid illuminated Tyris's face. Jordan suddenly realized he was staring again. He quickly looked away. Well, he said, scratching the back of his neck, before my mouth gets me into trouble again, I should probably clarify something. Tyris slowly looked up. Clarify. Last time I was here, I may have said something slightly inappropriate. One soldier nearly dropped a scanner. Tyris remained perfectly still. Yes, she said calmly. You did. Jordan nodded. I just wanted to confirm that it was meant respectfully. She studied him for a long moment. The soldiers around them stood very still. Finally, Tyris spoke. I did not interpret it as disrespect. Jordan blinked. Oh. Silence returned briefly. Then Jordan added carefully, so, I'm not banned from the station? No. Not fined? No. Not secretly on a Velari military watch list? Tyris paused. That remains classified. Jordan laughed quietly. Fair enough. Another scanning drone floated between them, briefly projecting a bright holographic grid over Jordan's jacket. The display flashed. Human, mostly harmless. Jordan pointed at the drone. That machine has excellent judgment. For the first time, Tyris's expression softened, very slightly, almost invisibly. But Jordan noticed, and for reasons he didn't quite understand, the most intimidating commander he had ever met suddenly seemed a little less like a fortress and a little more like a person standing on a quiet docking platform in the middle of the stars. The rusty comet approached Velari Station 12 once again, drifting through the quiet glow of the station's outer lights. Jordan sat in the cockpit with his boots resting on the console, staring lazily at the approaching docking ring while a half-finished cup of reheated coffee floated gently beside him in the weak artificial gravity. He grabbed the cup before it escaped completely. Stay, he told it. The navigation AI spoke calmly. Docking clearance granted. Platform 3. Jordan leaned forward and squinted. Platform 3 again? Yes. That's either good luck or a very organized cargo inspector. The ship's engines lowered to a quiet hum as the docking beams pulled the freighter toward the platform. The massive station slowly rotated beneath him like a giant mechanical city drifting in space. Jordan glanced through the front window, and there she was. Commander Tyris stood near the center of the platform exactly as she always did, surrounded by soldiers and scanning drones. Her armor reflected the bright station lights, giving her the same imposing appearance she carried every time he arrived. Jordan sighed with theatrical exhaustion. All right, he muttered to himself. Act normal. The ship touched down smoothly. For once. Jordan grabbed the cargo tablet and walked down the ramp. The familiar metallic smell of the station greeted him, along with the quiet mechanical noises of drones hovering and equipment humming. Tyris approached as soon as he stepped onto the platform. Captain Hale, Commander. He handed over the manifest. I bring exciting cargo today. She scanned the list. You always say that. Yes, but this time it's technically true. Tyris read the cargo description silently for several seconds. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. Experimental gravity stabilizers. Jordan pointed toward the crates behind him. Very valuable, also extremely sensitive. A nearby soldier muttered. That sounds reassuring. Jordan nodded seriously. They only malfunction if someone sneezes too hard. Two soldiers immediately looked at each other. Tyris closed the manifest tablet slowly. Captain Hale. Yes? You are joking. Mostly. The inspection drones floated toward the cargo containers and began projecting their blue scanning grids. One of the drones paused mid-scan and beeped suspiciously. Jordan looked at it. Oh, come on, he said. Those were stable when I picked them up. The drone beeped again. A soldier stepped forward cautiously. The crate suddenly gave a tiny thump from inside. Everyone froze. Jordan quickly raised both hands. Before anyone panics, I should mention something. Tyris looked at him calmly. What? That crate may contain a small test unit. A test unit? Very small. The crate thumped again. One of the soldiers whispered, It moved. Jordan walked over and tapped the crate lightly. Relax, he said to it. The crate responded with another thump. Jordan smiled awkwardly. It's a prototype gravity engine. Silence spread across the platform. Tyris stared at him. You brought experimental gravity technology into a military inspection zone. Jordan nodded. Very carefully. The crate suddenly lifted 2 centimeters off the ground. One soldier stepped back. Another whispered, Why is it floating? Jordan pointed at it. That's actually the intended feature. The crate gently bobbed in the air like a confused balloon. Tyris folded her arms slowly. Captain Hale. Yes. Why was this not clearly stated in your cargo declaration? Jordan shrugged. The engineers told me if I wrote unstable gravity engine, nobody would ship it. One of the soldiers laughed before quickly pretending he had coughed. Tyris walked closer to the floating crate and studied it with her scanner. The device displayed a complex energy field surrounding the container. After a moment, she nodded. It is stable. Jordan smiled proudly. See? The crate drifted slightly sideways and bumped softly into another container. Jordan winced. Mostly stable. Tyris returned the manifest tablet to him. Your cargo will remain under observation while docked. Fair. The floating crate slowly drifted back down to the floor with a quiet thud. Jordan leaned casually against another container. You know, he said, this might be the only station in the galaxy where bringing experimental gravity machines feels normal. Your definition of normal concerns me. Jordan laughed. That's because you run a very serious station. The scanning drones completed their inspection and beeped confirmation. Cargo approved. Jordan took the tablet and began heading back toward his ship. Halfway up the ramp, he stopped and turned around. Tyris was still standing where he had left her, watching the floating crate carefully. Jordan hesitated. Then he called down from the ramp. Commander? She looked up. Yes. Jordan grinned. For the record, that compliment from our first meeting still stands. Several soldiers suddenly became extremely focused on their equipment. Tyris remained completely still. For a moment, Jordan thought she might respond with a strict military warning. Instead, she turned slightly toward the soldiers. Return to your duties. They moved away immediately. Then Tyris looked back toward the ramp where Jordan stood. A faint color appeared across her cheeks again. You should depart before your cargo develops further. Personality, she said. Jordan laughed. Good advice. As the ramp closed behind him and the rusty comet's engines powered up, Commander Tyris stood on the platform watching the ship lift slowly into the station's vast docking chamber. For the first time in many years, the strict Velari commander realized something unusual. She was actually looking forward to the next inspection. The rusty comet slid through the outer perimeter of Velari Station 12 during the quiet hours of the station's cycle, when most civilian traffic had already cleared the docking rings. The massive structure rotated slowly ahead, its lights glowing softly against the endless darkness of space. Jordan leaned forward in his chair, studying the station with a thoughtful expression. Strange, he muttered. The navigation AI responded immediately. Clarify. There are fewer ships around tonight. Correct. Patrol alert level has increased. Jordan raised an eyebrow. That doesn't sound relaxing. The AI paused briefly before answering. Minor pirate activity detected along the nearby trade corridor. Jordan sighed. Of course there is. The docking guidance beam locked onto the freighter and gently pulled it toward the familiar platform. As the ship settled into place, Jordan peered through the cockpit window. The platform was quieter than usual. Fewer soldiers, fewer cargo drones. But one figure stood exactly where he expected. Commander Tyris. Jordan smiled slightly. Well, he said, standing up and grabbing his tablet, if there's trouble around here, at least the scariest officer in the galaxy is on duty. He walked down the ramp as the docking lights reflected off the polished floor. Tyris stepped forward as he approached, her armor catching the glow of the overhead lamps. Captain Hale. Commander, Jordan replied. You look busy. There is a security alert. I heard. Pirates? Yes. Jordan nodded thoughtfully. Those guys again. Honestly, space pirates have terrible timing. They always show up right when someone's trying to deliver fragile cargo. What cargo are you transporting today? Jordan handed her the manifest. Navigation arrays and ship processors. Tyris scanned the list quickly. Routine equipment. Exactly. Nothing explosive, glowing, or floating this time. One of the soldiers nearby whispered, That is encouraging. The inspection drones began scanning the crates stacked behind Jordan's ship. Blue holographic grids passed over the containers, while small robotic arms analyzed energy signatures. Jordan leaned against a crate. So how bad is the pirate problem? 2 ships were reported attacking civilian cargo routes. That's rude, Jordan said. Tyris looked at him. Rude. Extremely. A sudden alarm tone echoed through the docking platform. All soldiers immediately straightened. A holographic alert appeared above Tyris's wrist scanner. Unidentified vessel approaching perimeter. Jordan looked toward the station window. That seems inconvenient. Tyris turned toward the nearest officer. Status. Small vessel approaching at high speed. Jordan scratched his head. Please tell me that's not one of the pirates. The officer looked at the scanner. It might be. Jordan sighed. I just got here. Tyris gave a series of calm commands. Raise docking shields. Prepare patrol intercept. The soldiers moved quickly. Defensive barriers flickered to life along the outer edges of the docking platform, while security drones rose into the air. Jordan leaned casually against the crate again. You know, he said, most cargo deliveries do not involve pirate alerts. You attract unusual circumstances. That's unfair. The floating gravity crate was completely unrelated to pirates. Tyris ignored that. Another officer spoke up. The approaching vessel has altered course. It is leaving the perimeter. Jordan blinked. That was quick. The officer studied the scanner. They may have detected our defenses. Jordan nodded. Good. Nothing ruins a pirate's day like organized military infrastructure. The alert slowly faded from the holographic display. The platform relaxed slightly as soldiers returned to their positions. Jordan crossed his arms. Well, he said, that was exciting for about 12 seconds. Tyris returned her attention to the cargo inspection. You appear unusually calm. I haul cargo through half the frontier systems in the galaxy, Jordan replied. If I panicked every time someone mentioned pirates, I'd never finish a delivery. That is reasonable. Jordan smiled. See? I'm learning to be responsible. The final scanning drone beeped confirmation. Cargo approved. Tyris handed the tablet back to him. Your shipment is cleared. Jordan accepted it. Thanks. He turned toward the ramp, then paused. You handled that pirate situation pretty calmly. It was minor. Still impressive. Tyris gave a small shrug. It is my duty. Jordan studied her for a moment. You know something? What? You're a lot less terrifying once you get used to you. One of the nearby soldiers nearly dropped a scanner. Tyris looked at Jordan with a long, steady gaze. Captain Hale, yes? That statement could be interpreted as disrespect. Jordan raised his hands quickly. No, I meant it as a compliment. The silence lasted several seconds. Then Tyris turned slightly away and gave another order to the soldiers. But Jordan noticed something again. The faintest trace of color touched her cheeks. He smiled to himself as he walked back toward the rusty comet. Behind him, Commander Tyris stood on the quiet platform watching the freighter pilot disappear up the ramp. One of the younger soldiers cautiously approached her. "Commander?" "Yes." The soldier hesitated. "Why does that human speak to you like that?" Tyris looked toward the freighter as its engines slowly began powering up. For a moment she said nothing. Then she answered calmly, "Because he does not see the armor." The rusty comet approached Velari Station 12 once more, its hull reflecting the steady lights of the rotating fortress. Jordan guided the ship through the outer docking corridor with the relaxed confidence of someone who had flown the same route enough times to know which panels rattled and which thrusters liked to complain. "Docking request sent," the navigation AI said. Jordan stretched in his chair. "You know, I think this station might be starting to like us." The AI paused. "Evidence for that conclusion is limited." "Optimism," Jordan replied. "Humans do that." The station's guidance beam captured the freighter and gently pulled it toward the familiar platform. As the ship glided closer, Jordan leaned toward the cockpit window. The docking area was quieter than usual. Only a small group of soldiers stood along the platform. And at the center, Jordan blinked. Commander Tyris stood there. But something was different. She wasn't wearing her full command armor. Instead, she wore a simpler Velari officer uniform. Without the imposing armor plates, her posture seemed less rigid, her long silver hair resting loosely across her shoulders. The elegant curve of her long ears was clearly visible under the station lights. Jordan tilted his head. "Well," he muttered, "that's new." The rusty comet settled into the docking clamps with a soft, metallic thud. Jordan grabbed the cargo tablet and headed down the ramp. The moment he stepped onto the platform, Tyris walked toward him. "Captain Hale." "Commander," Jordan replied, looking around. "Quiet day?" "There are fewer inspections scheduled." "Lucky me." He handed her the cargo manifest. "This delivery is very boring," he added. "Just medical processors and communication relays." She scanned the list briefly. "Routine equipment." "Exactly. No floating crates, no mysterious glowing crystals. I'm trying to improve my reputation." One of the nearby soldiers muttered, "That will take time." Jordan grinned. The inspection drones floated toward the cargo containers and began scanning. Blue holographic grids washed across the crates while faint mechanical beeps filled the air. Jordan leaned against the ramp railing. "You know," he said casually, "I almost took a different route this month." Tyris looked up from the scanner. "Why did you not?" Jordan shrugged. "I figured this route had the best inspections in the sector. That is not a common reason." "Well," he said, "it's true." The drones completed their scan and beep confirmation. "Cargo approved." Tyris returned the tablet to him. "Your shipment is cleared." Jordan took it, but didn't move immediately. The station lights reflected softly in the polished metal floor between them. Cargo drones passed quietly in the distance. Jordan studied her uniform. "No armor today." "No." "Trying a new intimidation strategy?" "Perhaps." Jordan nodded thoughtfully. "I think it works." Tyris tilted her head slightly. "In what way?" "You look less like someone about to arrest me." "I have never attempted to arrest you." "You've definitely considered it." The faintest hint of a smile touched her expression before she hid it again. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Tyris said quietly, "Captain Hale." "Yes?" "For many years, people approached me only because of my position." Jordan nodded. "That makes sense. You command an entire station." "They spoke carefully, formally, always measuring their words." "Military life." "Yes." She paused briefly, choosing her next words with unusual care. "You did not do that." Jordan shrugged. "I'm terrible at formal conversations." "That is evident." He laughed. "I prefer honesty, even when it causes problems." Tyris looked at him steadily. "Your honesty was unexpected." Jordan scratched the back of his neck. "Well, if it makes you feel better, my brain still regrets that first compliment." Her long ears tilted slightly. "Why?" "Because I thought I was about to be thrown out of an airlock." For the first time since he had known her, Tyris laughed softly. The nearby soldiers instantly pretended they had heard absolutely nothing. Jordan blinked. "Okay," he said. "That might be the most surprising thing I've seen in this station." She folded her arms lightly. "You are exaggerating." "Am I?" Jordan hesitated for a moment. Then he said more quietly, "For what it's worth, I meant what I said that day." The silence between them felt different now. Not tense, just honest. Tyris looked down briefly and the familiar color returned to her cheeks. After a moment, she looked back up. "Captain Hale." "Yes. You travel this route often." "Pretty regularly." She nodded slightly. "That is acceptable." Jordan smiled. "That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said about my shipping schedule." He started walking back toward the ramp. Halfway up, he stopped and turned around. "Commander?" "Yes." Jordan grinned. "Still the most beautiful woman in the galaxy." This time Tyris didn't hide her reaction. Her cheeks flushed again, but she didn't turn away. Instead, she simply shook her head faintly as the rusty comet's ramp closed and the engines slowly powered up. The freighter lifted gently from the platform and drifted toward the open docking corridor. Tyris watched it leave until the ship disappeared into the endless darkness beyond the station. One of the soldiers approached carefully. "Commander?" "Yes." The soldier hesitated. "Should we expect that freighter to return again?" Tyris looked out toward the stars where the rusty comet had vanished. "Yes," she said quietly. And for the first time in many years, the commander who had built her life around armor and authority allowed herself something new. She allowed herself to hope for the next arrival.